Hello. I'm not up here on YouTube anymore that much, and I want to change that because I like recording my stupid thoughts. I just have a lot of thoughts, and I don't have a lot of time to edit, so kind of unedited. But I wanted to kind of talk about like death and dying and my obsession with it over the years. Not like my obsession with dying, but like my obsession with thinking about mortality and fear of death and dying. I think that's more accurately said. So as a teenager, I used to be actually really into a YouTuber who used to be called Ask a Mortician. Now she just goes by her name, Kaylin Doty. She makes very interesting content, and it really, in a way, I was fascinated by it in so many ways. I think as a teenager, I felt especially comforted by the idea of death. In no, I wasn't comfortable by the idea of death. I think it was comfortable for me to approach death and dying at the time because I felt like it was so far away from me. So at that time, I was just like, I'm interested in this and I'm afraid of death, but I'm not gonna think about it too much. And that's actually was about to change when I turned 19 because I was diagnosed with a heart issue. Um, so interestingly, I think a lot of people are a little smug about death. Like, I know quite a lot of people who will give me unsolicited advice about how to deal with the fear of death, or who will be smug about not being afraid of death. And a lot of these people, to be honest with you, come across as people who've just never really had to contemplate their own mortality in like a serious way. Like, they've had to contemplate it in a theoretical sense, but not really in an actual sense, right? So, like, I was almost, when I was 19 turning 20, I had to go on the night for heart surgery, something that was my first and only surgery to date, something that really was really scared me because, yeah, okay, sure, the chances of me dying in heart surgery aren't particularly large. At least not the type of heart surgery that I had. It's like a percent or something, but still, it's such a significant and invasive surgery where a lot of things could technically go wrong that, like, at that time I really had to contemplate what it meant to be alive, because for that 5 hours my heart was not pumping. I was completely and utterly dependent on a heart lung machine. Now, because of our medical system, that is totally fine, and I survived. Hello. It's been 4.5 years ago that that happened, so I'm clearly survived. But like, um, what that did do to me is that it really, really made me confront my mortality in a way that I had never had to do before. I had to think about what it would mean if I did die, what it would mean if I, because like again, it's not like, it's a big deal. Heart surgery is a big deal, even if it's not necessarily a big risk of mortality. It's a big deal. It's a big medical issue that had to be fixed, or else I would die. Like, not like tomorrow, but I would die relatively young, probably, right? And so the fact that I had to confront that at that age does make my relationship to death and dying very different from a lot of my peers. And now I do know a lot of people who've had way worse and had to confront their death at way worse ways. And I'm not talking to those people. Like, if you found a way of dealing with mortality in a way that helps for you and you are no longer afraid of death, that's good for you. I love that for you, whatever. And I do think that a lot of people who are very flippant about it, or like very, yeah, I'm not afraid of dying, or who quote like religious texts at me, or religious or philosophical ideas about death and dying at me, they don't tend to be the people that have actually experienced things that brought them closer to their own mortality. Rather, they have done that in a more theoretical sense, or in a lot of people's case, they have just been confronted by mortality in another way, like mortality because of someone else who died. That's valid, of course, but I do want people to realize it's not the same. It really isn't. Like, I've had to confront my own mortality back when, like, somebody who I went to school with died, or when my grandfather died. But it was not the same as when it was literally me going through medical crises. It didn't feel the same, and maybe that's not like universal truth. Um, but I do want people to realize that it's not um, it's not one of those things where you can just extrapolate, right? And again, I find people's insistence on telling me how to deal with my fear of mortality by smugly telling me about Buddhism or smugly telling me about God knows what without like having the same experiences as me, especially like that heart thing wasn't the only like medical crisis I've experienced, right? More recently I had like a non-epileptic seizure in public without knowing that I could get those. Um, and that also really made me have to reevaluate my life again. And it's one of those things where I have come to the conclusion that I'm not afraid of dying at some point. I'm not afraid of me dying at some point. I'm not afraid of me dying when I've lived a long and happy life. I'm afraid of dying tomorrow. I'm afraid of dying at an age where that's not appropriate. You know what I mean? Like not, but it's a tragedy if I did. I'm afraid of dying before I get to live my life. And I say that in a specific way because when I was like 20 again, one of the reasons I was so afraid of that surgery was because I was really afraid of dying. I was really afraid of dying before I've ever really lived. Because up until that point, all I did was survive. And surviving I did do for a longer time than that, obviously. After that surgery, after me and my ex broke up, after me and my other ex broke up, I survived for quite a long time after that. And I think I didn't start living until... That's kind of hard to say because it was kind of a gradual process, right? I started living in a less healthy way, but like in a way that kind of made me happy, and then I started living in a lot of anxiety and stuff, but like I did start living. Like I do mark my adult life at 22, like at not age 22, but like at like the year 2022 when I was 20 and turned 21 that year. For me, the best cure I've had so far to a fear of death has been to live my life. But like in a way that not like in a lot of ways when I say that, I don't really mean to say that like I've cured my sense of my fear of death by just living my life. I've also cured my fear of death by knowing two things, right? One, if I ever die tragically before the age of like 60, 70, 80, whatever, like I want to say 70, I think that's about the age that I find it to be tragic or non-tragic. Depends on a lot of situations, but like if we're putting an age on it, I think 70 is the age from which onwards I find it less tragic if I did die. Right? Okay, so I'm gonna put that if I die under the age of 670, 7. If I, if I die under the age of 70, I am going to have done everything I can, everything I do to make sure that I don't. But if I do, then that's a tragedy I can't do anything about. And something that I've done everything in my power to prevent, right? Besides, 70, for me, is still... Let's do the math. That's like a little less than 50 years from now, right? That's twice my age away from me. And I'm already at a point in my life where I don't remember most of my childhood. Like, not like, I remember important things, but like, I don't remember the day-to-day of my childhood anymore. Because it's just in the back of my mind somewhere, like in the same way that like I don't remember the day-to-day of my teenagehood. I remember the important things. I remember everything that's like had an impact on me. I don't think I suffer from any type of amnesia or anything. But I'm already at a point in my life where a lot of my day-to-day is not important enough for me to remember long term. Right? So I'm gonna be able to live so much life even if I did die before the age of 70. Not planning on it. Pretend. And if I did die after the age of 70, one of the things that really, really helped me realize that I don't have to be afraid of death, especially not now, is that yes, I will die at some point. I will likely die as an old person, considering of the position I am in society. And I am disabled, but I'm not like life-threateningly disabled as far as I'm aware. So there is a big chance that I will live farther than 70, right? I fucking better. And I have learned over the years that perspective can shift a lot. And I've also learned that old people lose their fear of death. Like, not everybody, but there is a trend among people that get older that they lose their fear of death in the way that they did used to have as a teenager or an adult, right? Like a younger adult. And that realization really helped me realize I cannot predict how I feel about death and dying when I am 70. I cannot predict how I feel about death and dying when I am even 50 or 40. I cannot predict how I feel about most things from like even a year from now. Because my perception of the world and my perception of myself and my perception of life changes all the time, rapidly. I need to be confident and have trust in the reality that when death comes to my doorstep, I will be ready and I will be okay to accept that fate. I need to think about that and phrase it that way to myself because yeah, there might be a chance that I die in a terrible way, right? But I don't want to prepare for that. I don't want to live my life thinking about all the ways that I could die. Thinking about all the ways that I could die stupidly. Yes, of course, I'll do the precaution. Again, I'll do everything I can do in my own power to prevent dying in a stupid way. But not to a detriment of my own living, right? It's okay to be afraid of death. I think I still very much am. There was a time in my life, actually, that last year, about this time, where I kind of felt like I was losing my fear of death. I was okay if I died tomorrow. I very much don't have that anymore. I think, again, this is one of those things where there was a small period of my life where I felt that way, and then the moment that I was hit with, like, an actual medical emergency, like something that was medically not okay with me, I immediately had to let go. Immediately that fear came back. That's what I mean when, like, those people who have never experienced something medically wrong with them to a degree where it might actually be something serious. A lot of those people are very smug about their revelations and whatever, and like how they are not afraid of death. For some people that might actually be the reality, but like, I'll talk to you when you have had a medical scare that was scary enough for you to actually consider dying, you know? I'll talk to you when you have a heart issue, or like something that might be cancer, or like something neurological. That neurological stuff can be really scary. So again, not to sound smug myself, but to me I find it really annoying. I just find it really annoying. Like, come back to me when you've developed some disabilities, okay? No, but yeah. So I don't know. This is a little ramble. I just want people to think about these things in ways that are more helpful and less smug and trying to say that you figured it out. Because I've met many people that thought that that lost their fear of death, and then for many reasons that fear of death came back. So you may think you fixed that issue, but if you thought you could just shelve it, you cannot. Because life goes on, and that means that things that bring you closer to death will also keep happening to you. So you probably have to process the fact that you will die over and over and over again. And that's just it, right? It's okay to be afraid of death. You don't have to be like psychologically above it all. You know what I mean? Like, that bothers me. I would rather just talk to somebody face to face about the fact that we are both afraid of death than to be lectures about somebody who thinks that they have figured it all out. Because you probably haven't. If you're my age, you probably haven't. And there's probably not something that you can tell me that I have not heard another, like, 500 times. So yeah. Just a little PSA. I don't know. Okay, bye.